Hello everyone, Switch Axis counter has become a vital part of the moveset. It has many benefits while not being as powerful as in Sunbreak, and it works a bit differently here in Wilds. Anytime you are in sword mode, you can hit the morph button and standard attack button to counter any incoming attack. You can counter physical attacks, elemental attacks, roars, Gypsy Rose Flash, Miso's Bubbles, and even Jindahar's Nuke. It doesn't give you any iframes like most other counters, and instead grants you hyper armor with a huge damage reduction and a special follow-up if you time it correctly. This makes Counter Strike a very important skill for Switch X, since it activates on hyper armor. So for Switch X it activates on the counter, the offset slash and the full release slash, for example. Other counters can benefit from this skill in this way. But since we are still getting hit, we also suffer from ailments and status effects. For example, Rathian's backflip will poison you if you counter it. The timing window for the counter is very generous, but you do want to hit a perfect counter, which means you must activate the counter just as you are about to get hit. Whenever you hit a counter, you build up amp meter and get switch gauge back. On a perfect parry, you build up even more of both resources. Your counter is more of a tool in this game and not a super high DPS option like it was in Sunbreak. It also doesn't instantly trigger amp state anymore. It builds some switch gauge, builds some amp meter, but more importantly, it keeps your flow going. Since sword mode is the less mobile part of Switch X, your evasive options are limited and there are attacks you can't just sidestep or dodge roll away from unless you're using evade window. The counter allows you to stay in your flow and keep the damage coming while also benefiting your most valuable resources. A successful counter triggers a double slash, and from here you have a lot of options for follow-ups. You can directly go for a Heavenward Flurry to build a big chunk of amp meter. You can go for an overhead slash, which is quicker, and after said overhead slash you can instantly trigger the next counter, which is useful for fast monsters that use chain attacks. But the fastest way to get another counter is to just sidestep after your counter attack is done. Alternatively, you have access to 3 different morph slashes from here. The backwards fade morph, the standard morph slash, or the forward overhead morph slash. So you have 6 options available to you after the counter. Once again, proving Switch X's incredible adaptability and versatility. The chain into Heavenward Flurry makes the counter a strong opener to many hunts, right after a sneak attack. So you begin your hunt with a sneak attack, morph to sword mode and get a couple of hits in, counter the roar, and go for the Heavenward Flurry. Any file except for the power file will be amped up before the monster gets the chance to do anything. And remember that after the Heavenward Flurry you could perform another counter, so potentially you can counter the monster's opening move as well. I've read a lot of comments about difficulties with the inputs and the timing. So about the inputs, as a mouse and keyboard player you can change the inputs however you like under the keyboard configuration. As for us controller players, I have bad news. We have to practice it. If you really struggle with the input, go into the training area for a couple of minutes and the counter will very soon be in your muscle memory. As I said before, the timing is fairly generous, but right at the beginning of the animation you have a perfect parry window, so you want to hit the input at the last possible moment. If the counter is triggered, you are basically safe from any ongoing attack. Even longer ongoing attacks like flame breaths won't knock you back anymore. Since practicing it is pretty easy because you could counter anything, it is all about building it into your flow, and there are attacks that aren't really beneficial to counter. Countering an elemental attack like a fireball or a frenzy cloud from Gore isn't necessary if you are out of range. You should focus more on getting back in range. It's the same for attacks where the monster is just passing you with a sweep, for example, so it gets out of range before you pull off the follow-up attack. But the counter can help you survive attacks you couldn't dodge otherwise, and this video was made because some people asked for tips or didn't even know Switch X has a counter, and there are some interesting facts about it beyond the basic "it's a counter, you can counter like longsword" stuff. I hope you learned something, and I see you on the next episodes. Happy hunting, everyone.